Hey guys, so I wanted to go over with you some announcements and to talk through the blood flow that we've been talking about the last few days to give you guys a little bit more practice with it. So hopefully you guys have seen the announcement and that you don't have a quiz today, that I moved it to Monday and Tuesday in class so that you guys have the weekend to finish up any work that you've been working on through this week over the heart structures, their functions, and the blood flow. So you guys get the rest of the weekend to work on all of the pages that we've assigned from this week and to study for your quiz that we will take on Monday and Tuesday in class next week. But I know one of the hard things for students is understanding this blood flow. So I wanted to talk through it with you guys one more time so that you can use this video as a resource to help you study. And it's nice because it also goes over the structures as well. And so, like we talked about in class, I always like starting with the superior and inferior vena cava. So those are structures 9 and 10 in this diagram. And what we see in these structures is that they're the ones that are bringing deoxygenated blood back to the heart from the body. So the superior vena cava, I know it says anterior, but it's superior. The superior vena cava brings blood back from the cells in the upper portion of the body, and the inferior vena cava is bringing blood back from the lower portion of the body. They both feed into the right atrium. So that's structure 11 is the right atrium. And so blood flows from the right atrium. Remember, we talked about this valve here. That's the tricuspid valve that's in between the right atrium and the right ventricle. So as this blood flows through, it goes down into the right ventricle. And remember, we talked about the fact that it's blue is because it's oxygen poor, or the blood has little oxygen in it and a lot of CO2 because it came from our cells. And so after the blood goes into the right ventricle, it is going to pass through the next valve, which is your pulmonary valve, which was an example of our semilunar valves. And so it passes through there into the pulmonary trunk to go to the pulmonary arteries. Remember, pulmonary is our root word for lungs, so they're going to the lungs. And then the other thing that we learned was that arteries, the way that we can remember what arteries do is because they start with an A, so they take blood away from the heart. So the pulmonary arteries are taking blood away from the heart and to the lungs. And so then that structure 3 here in this series is the lungs, where we're going to see gas exchange occur. And we're going to talk a lot more about this next unit when we get into the respiratory system. But what's going to happen is that carbon dioxide that's in the blood now is going to diffuse out into the lungs so that we can breathe it out. And then when we breathe oxygen in, the oxygen will diffuse into the blood so that it becomes oxygenated, which is why we see as it moves through the capillaries, which you guys will get to learn more about capillary structure. Not next week, week after. In that the reason that they turn red is because oxygen has diffused into the capillaries and into the bloodstream. So now we have oxygen-rich blood. After that, we're going to have the pulmonary veins bring the blood back to the heart. So veins have the word in them, and so that's how we remember veins and in, because they're bringing blood into the heart. And the pulmonary veins lead to structure 4, which is the left atrium. Yep, left atrium. And then the blood drops down. So this was our bicuspid valve. It's also referred to as the mitral valve. And then goes down into structure number 5, which is the left ventricle. So one of the other key points that we talked about this week was that the left side of our heart is more developed than the right because the left ventricle has to pump blood to the whole body, whereas our right side is only pumping blood to the lungs, which are right next to the heart. So it doesn't need to be as developed as the left side. So there's a lot more cardiac muscle here on our left, around our left ventricle, than there is around our right ventricle. So as the blood gets pumped from the left ventricle, it's going to pass through our other semilunar valve, which is called the aortic valve. And that's because it's leading the blood into the aorta, which remember I said was the largest artery in the body. And the aorta is what feeds all the blood vessels so that the oxygenated blood can get to all of our tissues throughout our body. And so you'll see it will branch to the top, and it'll also branch to the bottom of our bodies. And so at each end, you'll have capillary beds where the gas exchange is going to occur. But now our cells need all that oxygen that's in our blood. So the oxygen diffuses to our cells. And during that time, our cells produce CO2 through cellular respiration. Remember all that good talk during carbon time and bio? And so the CO2 will then diffuse from the cells into the bloodstream. And so now that's why the blood is blue after the capillary beds in our body, because it now has the CO2 and low oxygen levels. So high CO2 levels, low oxygen levels. And now the whole process starts all over again by that blood going up through the superior vena cava or inferior vena cava to go back to the heart so that the cycle can start all over again. So what I'd really recommend, guys, is writing these steps out in your own words, taking notes on what we talked about, and then talking about it with someone. Come to office hours, and you can walk me through this step, and I can see what parts you're missing, or have the adults in your house help you. If you got a sibling around, get them to listen to you. See if you can teach them about the blood flow. But writing it down and communicating it is really going to help you guys understand this, because you're not going to just understand it overnight. It takes practice. And so make sure you guys are practicing to understand the structures and the blood flow together. And let me know if you guys have any questions as you work on your homework over the weekend and study for your quiz. That will be on Monday over heart structures and blood flow. Have a good day, guys.